students, welcome to our YouTube channel. Today we are going to talk about a concept related to another unit, that is communication. Today we are going to talk about interpersonal communication. So we all know there are different kinds of communication. What is communication? Communication comes from the Latin word communas, which means to make things common. So you have certain things common between you and you talk and deliberate about it. It is not always words. It can be a mixture of words, sign, symbols. So it can be various kinds of things that you are trying to actually talk about certain things to someone else, right? So there can be different things that are included here. There can be different kinds of communication also. There can be interpersonal, intrapersonal, transpersonal, verbal, non-verbal. We see that nowadays a lot of theories are asked. So today in this class, we are going to discuss about interpersonal communication and two theories that are associated with interpersonal communication. Let us look at the definition of interpersonal communication. Okay, so interpersonal communication defined. Interpersonal communication is basically a kind of communication that happens between two people, while intrapersonal is a communication that happens with the communication that is with oneself. So when I'm talking to myself, that is called as the intrapersonal communication. But the interpersonal communication is a type of a communication. It's like an interactional process that happens between two people, either face to face or through a certain medium being used, right? So it can be in any way possible. Interpersonal is a kind of communication when two people are interacting with one another. Intrapersonal is a type of communication when you are talking to yourself. While transpersonal is a kind of communication when you're talking to some entity that is not present there also, right? So if you're talking to God, praying to God, it becomes a transpersonal type of communication. When you are talking to your friend, it becomes what? It is an interpersonal communication. When you are self-retrospecting, when you are talking to yourself, when you are pondering upon a certain thing, it is termed as the intrapersonal communication. Right, so these are the three types of communication. There are about 4 specific perspectives that are there when we study interpersonal communication. These are as follows. The relational, that is also talking about the qualitative perspective. The situational, that talks about the contextual perspective, because the context is very important when the two persons are talking to one another. The quantitative aspects and the strategic effects that are also called as the functional effect. Let us look at these various aspects or the specific perspectives that can affect the interpersonal communication, and they are impacted by the interpersonal communication also. So the first is relational. Communication in which the roles of the sender and the receiver are shared by two people simultaneously in order to create meaning is termed as a relational type of perspective that is seen under the interpersonal communication. So a good interpersonal communication will always have a relational perspective. Two people will have a certain relationship and then they will talk amongst one another. They will have something that is common between them. It's a kind of a qualitative activity that happens. Now, what is qualitative? You cannot measure it. There are feelings involved. There is something common between them. That is why they are talking to one another. You cannot measure it, right? So it's a communication in which the roles of the sender and the receiver are shared and the two people are simultaneously talking, and because of the sharing of the message, a meaning is created. Then comes situational or the contextual basis. So communication that occurs between two people is very specific to a particular context. Context and content are very important. Again, let us look at the definition. So I told you communication is actually when you make things common. So you make things common and then you discuss upon it, right? So this making things common is only possible when the two people who are talking to one another know one another. Maybe they know the specific context. You are here watching my video because you know that we are talking about communication and this is something that is asked in the paper, right? If I am talking, say, about singing, dancing, and you are here to study about UGC-NET, So you and me have nothing in common, so you will skip the video, right? So this means that there is a specific content that is needed so that the two people can talk to one another. Then comes the quantitative perspective. So the quantitative perspective basically is something that can be measured, right? These are the qualities, the quantities, these are the quantities that can be measured. So it's a didactic interaction, basically an interpersonal communication that happens between two people. So two people are involved. It's the quantitative perspective that we have. Two people, that's the quantity that we know. They are interacting with one another. If we talk about mass communication, on the other hand, we do not know whom are talking, who are the people who you are interacting with, right? As compared to group interaction. In group communication, group interaction, you know few people who are talking amongst themselves, or you are talking to few people. While when it comes to mass communication, you are talking to someone and you don't even know who is listening to you. So putting this video on YouTube is a kind of a mass communication that would happen. While if I teach it in the class and I know I know how many students are there in the class, it becomes what? It becomes a group communication. These two types of communication are very different than what? Than the didactic interaction that happens between two people in the interpersonal communication. So it's the quantitative function that is also there. Then comes the functional perspective and the strategic perspective. So communication for the purpose of achieving interpersonal goals is done here. There is definitely one function, or say a particular goal or objective that is to be met. That is why these two people are talking to one another. So they have some relationship. They are talking according to one context and some content that is common. Two people are talking and to come to a proper solution, or they have a common goal, right? So these are the things that you need to remember. These are the 4 specific perspectives to study about interpersonal communication. Now, the 2 theories. One is communication competence. So this word competence is asked in the paper a lot of time. Let us see communication competence क्या होता है. So the ability to choose a communication behavior that is both appropriate and effective to a given situation is called as communication competence. So when two people are talking to one another, you have to choose the perspective, choose the stance, choose something that you are talking, maybe the goal that you are setting in such a manner that it is common, that you and the other person with whom you are interacting, you are on the same page. This means that you have to choose a communication behavior that is both very appropriate and effective to the situation in which you are in, right? Then it says it allows one to achieve their communication goal without causing the other party to lose the face. So the other party is only going to understand whatever you are saying when you have competence, when you have proper strategic method to talk, when you have proper behavior to communicate and the other person is clear with it, when there is no entropy, when there are no abstractions in between, then you say that there is communication competence. Then there are 3 components involved in it. First is knowledge, then skill, and then comes motivation. Knowledge helps you. Knowledge is gained when there is a particular kind of a skill involved, and skill and knowledge both play an important role, and they are only possible that there is an existence of knowledge and skill improvement when there is motivation. So you are motivated to talk to, you have a particular skill by which you will talk, and there will be a knowledge gain. Like this you can remember. And who are the theorists? So Spitzberg is an important theorist who started to talk about it. Spitzberg and Kupach. Then another theory is the uncertainty reduction theory. Uncertainty reduction theory is often seen as a very important theory associated with interpersonal communication. Whenever you start to talk to someone, what happens? Initially, there are a lot of uncertainties and you do not know about the other person. Gradually, the tone becomes down, you get to know about the other person better, and the uncertainties that was there between you also mellow down. This is the theory that is also seen in the communication. The initial interaction between the stranger are characterized by information seeking in order to reduce uncertainty. So the first interaction that you have with any person is always there to reduce the amount of uncertainties that are there. When the uncertainty are reduced, then there is a proper kind of interpersonal communication. So uncertainty is reduced as levels of self-disclosure, non-verbal warmth and similarity increases. So as the self-disclosure happens, as you try to explicitly talk about yourself, as the non-verbal warmth is there, so verbal and non-verbal, both kind of communication becomes important. When you're talking to someone with full warmth, they will also accept that and the uncertainties will reduce. And last, because of this, the similarity between you guys will increase and the uncertainty will be reduced and the proper communication would happen, right? So we have different theorists who also talked about this theory, that is the uncertainty reduction theory. Right? Berger is someone who talked about it. Calabresi is also another theorist. So these are the two theories that are associated with the very important concept of your interpersonal communication. Now, this is also one theory that is often asked in the paper, and it is also associated with interpersonal communication, that is the constructivism. This theory is also associated with the teaching aptitude and other concepts, and it talks about the mental growth of the person. But it has somehow affected the communication model also. So the cognitive complexity is always there. The cognitive complexity leads you to a rhetorical design in a proper logical manner. When it is happened, when the design is very logical and it is very sophisticated, then what happens? The communication becomes very logical and sophisticated in itself, and it will always give you beneficial outcomes. This means that yes, there are cognitive complexibilities. Everyone is very complex. Everyone, the two people who are talking to one another, they come with their own set of notions, own set standards. So their cognitive growth and complexity is very different. Their rhetoric design is also very different. But if you work over it, what will happen? A very sophisticated communication would happen, and this will benefit. The outcome would be achieved soon. The goal would be achieved soon. So what's the explanation? People who are cognitively complex in their perception of the others have a greater capability of sophisticated communication that will achieve positive outcomes. And Jessie Della is the theorist who talked about it. So she said that if you are too complex and you have a good hold over your mind, if you have a good cognitive complexity, then you will deal with the students better. Then you will deal with the other person better, whomever you are talking to. So 1 and 2 people are talking. I think that I have a lot of cognitive complexity inside me. I can look at other facets of the communication perspective also. I can judge the personality of the person very nicely. This will help me do what? I will design my statements very logically. A very sophisticated communication would happen. And of course, I will communicate in a better manner. And the other person will also communicate. And there will be no entropy. Now, what is entropy? Entropies are the barriers that can be there in between. So, a good communication is always there when there is no barrier. No barrier, it can be semantic, it can be personal, it can be, any psychological, sociological, any kind of barrier can pop up in between. And a good communication is always there when no entropy is there. So it is only possible when you have a good cognitive hold over your mind. So these three theories are important: constructivism, then we have uncertainty reduction theory, and then we have communication competence, right? With this, I think you have, understood by now what is interpersonal communication, what are the three theories associated with it, how are the different perspectives involved, and what are the things that you need to look at when you talk about the interpersonal communication. The perspectives that are there, that is the relational, the situational, the quantitative, and the strategic, right? So I hope you understood the video. If you have any doubt, you can ask me that in the comment section and I'll surely reply to you. Thank you.